Well, good day, everyone. Welcome back to another episode with me. Thank you, Cairo Secure, and thank you for spending some time with me. I always want to make your time worthwhile, help your office be a little bit more profitable and more efficient, if nothing else. Today's topic, we're going to talk about the chiropractic scope of practice, and specifically more about therapies. And I want to hit on the two areas. As some of you may be aware, I'm part of the Optum Health Coding and Reimbursement Committee. And one of the things that being appointed to this committee, I want everyone to know that doesn't mean I work for the insurance company, I'm an appointed member, is one of the things they look at is for chiropractic claims and for chiropractic documentation. What are the common areas that chiropractors run into problems with, particularly ones that could be audited and there's going to be recoupment? So we want to prevent some of that happening and making sure there's a good understanding of how do we document therapies, what they mean, who can do them, and so forth. So let's go to the slides. Let's talk about the chiropractic scope of practice and therapies. What do chiropractors do? What are they allowed to provide? What services? And in fact, who may perform them? And really a little bit on how to document them as well. So before I get there, though, I want to kind of bring a little history to this. I'm a chiropractic legacy. My father was a chiropractor. I've been around this my whole life. I'm 62, and I've never had nothing but chiropractic be the profession for my family. And when I give you some history, when you think of chiropractic in the sense of therapies and everything else, think of where we've come and where we can get ourselves to. Obviously, there's been lots of changes that have occurred over time, but for those that can remember when chiropractic was very back in its infancy, and I even go back even to the 60s, did we have a lot of issues for people not respecting the profession? I can remember as a time, people would say to me, your father's not a doctor. And of course, I knew what they were trying to intimate, but think of where we've changed. You're all familiar with the show Jeopardy? Take a look. This is one of the most popular shows on TV. Chiropractic is now part of the vernacular. Notice these three questions appeared on a Jeopardy program not long ago, and I want to point out that's where chiropractic has come. So we got to make sure that we're ready to continue to move forward because now people understand what we do, how we do. In fact, you want to see how popular it is? Can you get this one from Wheel of Fortune? Heck, I didn't get it. It is going to the chiropractor. Think of where we are in our profession, where we have come from, and where we're going to be. Well, it really goes back to our origin. What do we do? What is the scope of practice of what chiropractors do? Well, of course, it's manipulation. That's the main thing. That's what, D.D. Palmer, B.J. Palmer all focused in on. And it's going to be the spinal column mostly, but obviously it could be extra spinal areas. But more than just that, can chiropractors do more than manipulate? Of course. Within the scope of practice for chiropractors, I would say across the U.S., a chiropractor may perform therapies. And therapies, what I mean by that are the physical medicine, physical therapy things, whether it be heat, massage, and so forth. And certainly those are things that are going to be adjunctive to what you do. Now, can you do them by themselves? Sure. There could be visits where you might do a therapy only, not manipulation, maybe a little bit of both. I always go back to the main thing we do is manipulate, but certainly therapies are going to be a big part of what we do to help facilitate the patient's recovery. And that includes all of these services you see on this page. And I have here just a quick list. This is what we give out at our seminars. You're probably familiar if you've been to mine or something similar, where it gives you the common CPT codes. You'll see here we have the chiropractic manipulation first, but then all the physical medicine modalities, whether it's going to be supervised or constant attendance. And we want to talk a little bit about those in the sense of what is it that we're doing? Well, when we're doing chiropractic, of course, it means manipulation. We have 4 codes, 3 spinal, 1 extra spinal. But then we have modalities. Physical medicine services, modalities are things we apply to a patient, but don't have to be there. And you notice some of them are considered supervised, which means you can put them on the patient, don't have to remain there with them. Okay, great. Just put some heat on, make sure they're comfortable, maybe leave it on for 10 minutes. Then we have modalities that are constant attended. Things like electric stim, that's manual, or ultrasound. Notice these all have time. And I'm going to make an emphasis here. I do want you to think about time a bit because obviously these codes can be billed for more than 1 unit based on the amount of time you spend. Unattended modalities, it doesn't matter. If you put a hot pack on for an hour, and I'm exaggerating, doesn't matter. It's 1 unit. Or if you put it on for 10 minutes. With these, though, there is a time limit. The time limit is 15 minutes. You'll see here also, though, codes things like for laser. 2 different codes, notice, S8948 and 0552T. One is a HCPCS code, one's a CPT type 2. Nonetheless, do cover it in many insurances. In fact, the VA does, in fact, cover it. We also have other things that we might do as an adjunct to chiropractic, going to be therapeutic procedures. And you'll see here, it's going to be things like exercise, neuromuscular education, massage, manual therapy, therapeutic activities. But you'll notice all of these also have time. So again, these are the adjunctive things within scope that chiropractors may do. Now, what I want to focus in on, though, is there's a lot of possibilities of services we may do, but I really like to kind of dig into what we really do. For instance, when I'm working with an office for the first time and helping them with a fee schedule, I tell them, look, let's not focus in on 100 codes because you're not billing 100 codes. Let's talk about the 5, 6, or 7 things you do regularly to make sure we've done it right. So what are the common therapies that chiropractors actually do? Well, heat, of course, but electric stim, that could be manual, meaning hands-on or unattended. There could be ultrasound or other types of electrical therapies, including laser, but also things like massage or manual therapy, so-called soft tissue mobilization, manipulation, if you will. And then, of course, the active therapy codes, exercise, neuromuscular education. So my reality is most of you are probably beyond doing manipulation, probably having 5 or 6 therapy codes that you use regularly. In fact, maybe 3 very commonly. In fact, if you think of best practices, what are the best practices for neuromusculoskeletal conditions related to chiropractic? Well, manipulation, of course, but also active therapy. So I'd always say put an emphasis there. However, let's talk about documenting. This is the issue. What do we have to document when we're doing a modality? Keep it simple. Tell me what modality you're doing. If there's any type of intensity or range, indicate that. Tell me where you're applying it, and tell me how long you're doing it. Keep in mind, the best way to document a therapy is document it in a way that someone reading it could essentially perform it. So by example, let's take a look if I'm doing cervical traction. Notice this one says cervical spine distraction with harness. It's intermittent, meaning off on, at 30 pounds of force for 15 minutes, supine with a roll support. Clearly know what type you're using here. Or infrared heat. Nothing fancy here. I did infrared heat to the lumbar spine for 15 minutes. Now, these codes, actually, the amount of time you spend doesn't change the units, but it's important to know, so you know, did I do it last time for 10 or 15? So as you progress. How about electric stim? Now, electric stim can be varied. You can do 2 pads, 4 pads, 10 units. So explain to me what you're doing. I did bilateral 4 pads to the trapezius, 50 megahertz for 15 minutes, or to patient tolerance, whatever that might have been. Or ultrasound even. Think if I told you do ultrasound to the knee, would you know what I actually meant? Probably not. I mean, it's pretty broad to state it that way. So you know what you want to indicate? I did ultrasound to the patellar tendon for 8 minutes at 0.5 intensity. That way, if you think of it, a staff person might be able to follow this, or an assistant. And that's something else we're going to get into, because can you have a staff do some of these? Well, let's focus in on a few more. Let's talk about massage and manual therapy. Deep tissue work in some instances would be the manual therapy, but realize they're very similar. That's why both these pictures look the same. The major difference is massage is mostly used for relaxation, whereas manual therapy is usually about range of motion or muscle mobilization. The nuance is small, but nonetheless, they are separate. In fact, I would say the manual therapy is more of a focal therapy, whereas the massage is probably more broad. It's really more about the outcome. So what do we document here? Well, tell me what you're doing it for. What's the outcome? If I'm doing probably trigger point therapy, why am I doing that? Well, to reduce the trigger point, but also probably to increase range of motion, increase muscle length compared to massage for relaxation. So tell me what it is and why, where you're doing it, and any types of assessment that you're doing for it. And then, of course, the time. Now, you notice here it says start and stop time. I'm going to recommend you do one or the other. Do I want to do the time I started at 11 o'clock, ended at 11:15, or do I want to state just 15 minutes? We'll talk about that, but either is acceptable. However, I would lean towards putting actual time, because chances are you're spending more than you might realize. What about another active therapy, or an active therapy like exercise? And this is going to be your standard strength, flexibility, endurance, so-called weight training, if you will, but it's going to be a lot of varieties. It could be bikes and treadmills for endurance, gym equipment, of course, weights, isometric, isotonic, even include stretching. Stretching, you may be assisting the patient, but could you also be directing the patient? In other words, it's to increase strength, increase flexibility, or in fact, even increase endurance. So I want to think along the lines of active therapies, whether it's going to be exercise, neuromuscular education, or any of those time therapies, we do want to make sure we are documenting properly time. This is one of the major issues I run into with audits for offices. I will defend you backwards and forwards so long as you have time. If you don't write time down, it didn't happen. I'm sure you've seen this before. If you didn't write it down and it didn't happen, keep that in mind. Not very hard. Just write it down. Now, you're all probably familiar with the 8-minute rule, so I put a synopsis here. Remember, a time service, though it says 15 minutes, you've got to spend at least 8 technically to be billable under the CMS regulation, which has been adopted by every major carrier. So 1 unit can be as little as 8. But for a second unit, notice it goes to 23 because it's 15 plus 8, hence the 23 minutes. Or if you're going to do 3 units, it has to be 2 full units, meaning 30 plus 8. So in other words, it can't work if I do 8 minutes of this one and 8 minutes of that one. That would not be a unit of each, because when you're doing a time service, they become cumulative, even if they're separate. Because if I spend 8 plus 8, it's only 16 minutes. And you'll notice 16 minutes only is 1 unit. So do keep in mind, whether cumulative or one service, the time must meet the number of units billed. Now, here's a big issue. We've got to document time. This is the one thing we run into tons of problems with. People ask me, what do I need to document for time? Well, let's hit on to that. And let's focus first on, this is something I get every year. We do in one of our meetings with Optum. We go over where are doctors running into problems, particularly for Kairos in documentation. Now, the good news for us is we're actually not as bad as PTs. PTs have a higher value than we do. But you'll notice, dating back to 2014 to 20, the number one area we have problems with for improper documentation is time services. Now, we went down from 64% to 22%, but is a quarter of the time still a good thing? No, that's going to be one we're always going to get dinged on. Get in the habit of time. So notice here it says, what are the acceptable methods of time? The acceptable methods are a specific number of minutes. Tell me I did manual therapy, by example, for 15 minutes. Or tell me I went from 9:30 to 9:45. Either is acceptable, but please don't get in the habit of just checking a box. You spent 15 minutes. Tell me how much time you really spent. Because if you check a box for 15, I kind of go, well, you just wrote that by checking a box. Did you really spend it? I find often when people say they spent 15, they may have spent more. And keep this in mind. What if I do a therapy for 10 minutes and another therapy for 10 minutes? Can I bill a unit for both? Well, let's think about that. If I do 10 plus 10, how many minutes total is that? Well, it's 20. So how many units is 20? Ooh, only 1. But what if I spent 11 minutes plus 12 minutes for 23? Would that allow me to bill a unit of each? Absolutely. So long as there's 8 minutes on at least one and the rest equals the total time. So let's get in the habit of documenting time by telling me how many minutes you have spent. What you want to avoid, and look at the things here that say acceptable, look at the unacceptable list. Writing in terms of units. If you say I just did 2 units of exercise, not going to fly. If you said, hey, I did from 15 to 23 minutes, not going to fly. They want that number of minutes, not an average. And you can't just indicate a quantity like I did it times 2. Get in the habit of just documenting the number of minutes. Not hard, but it's something that sometimes, because we were never taught that at first, we don't like to change. Well, let's not be the old dinosaur. Now, these therapies, can they be done by staff? Now, this is something across the 50 states. For the most part, that's going to be true. Staff members can absolutely do therapies under the supervision of the doctor, meaning the chiropractor has evaluated, written up a plan, and then that staff member does it. The key factor here is proper supervision. For the most part, there's a few exceptions to this, but for the most part, supervision means you must be in the office at the time the therapy is being performed. You don't have to be in the same room looking over them, but within the office suite, so if someone needs information or help from you, you can be there. The exception would be some California providers are probably aware, in California, you actually don't have to be in the office except 50% of the time. So therefore, if someone is doing massages on Fridays, but you're not there on Friday, so long as you're with them half of their work week, you can still do it. What I'm going to want to make sure everyone knows, learn and assure you follow your state requirement. This simple, make sure you're on site, never an issue. And do keep in mind, there are 18 states that will require that the assistant, if you will, the chiropractic assistant, have certifications. Not many states do that, but just make sure it's within scope. And when they document, you're documenting. So make sure that they understand the proper documentation, because you don't want to be caught with audits. Don't make me be the person that comes back and you hire me after the fact. We do a service called the Network, of course, that when offices get themselves in trouble, they call me. Hey, Sam, how do I fix this? What do I need to do? The malpractice carriers, ChiroSecure and all the major ones contact me as well. You know what I'd like to do? Let's make sure your office has done it right the first time. Learn these simple rules. Let me be part of that. We can help you with that. Work on one-on-one, share screens via Zoom and other ways to make sure your office is compliant. But more than compliance, it's about how much you're earning. You're doing the work. Let's make sure we have it in the right way. And frankly, it's not hard. Allow me to be that team member with you. Take a look, go to this QR code for our network, or just take a look at our website, hjrosscompany.com. We're here to help with ChiroSecure, and with us, we're here to make sure your practice thrives and continues to make more money. That's at the end of the day, you are a business. You want to be a good doctor, of course. That's number one. But you also are a business provider. So we have to make sure on the other side of it, are we doing the things right to make sure we get paid? I want to make sure of that. Until next time, everyone, thanks so much for being with me.